So a number of states have been trying to restrict access to pornography in their states. Texas is one of them. They implemented some kind of law that basically told the porn sites, hey, you have to verify the age of people who are trying to access your sites using like actual documents like their driver's license or some sort of like actual physical document that they have to submit to these porn sites. And the porn sites in response said, that's a humongous security concern along with the money that it would take to invest in this sort of project. We're just going to block access to the website in your entire state. And so for a number of years now, porn sites like Pornhub and most of the major porn sites have been blocked in Texas. And the only way to access them is by using VPN services that hide where your network is coming from and make it seem like you're accessing the site from a different country or something. I think a number of other states have been trying to do similar things. For a long time, it was tied up in the court and they weren't sure exactly where it was stood. I think a ruling was made and then appeals were made, but it seems like the Supreme Court officially said that it is okay for Texas to do this sort of thing just a few days ago. An ideologically divided Supreme Court on Friday affirmed a Texas law that requires users to verify their age to access porn sites, the first major legal test of statuses in 24 states aimed at protecting young people from lewd content that has become ever easier to view. In a 6-3, it's super annoying how like authoritarian people who want to like restrict adults' access to reasonable things like porn or weed or whatever use children as like the excuse for restricting it when really it's just like they don't like porn. Like they are trying to this is a pure lie, right? These people just don't like porn and don't think it should be accessible. Their reason is not like some super altruistic, deep-seated, oh my God, there's an epidemic of kids accessing porn or whatever, and it's this huge, big problem. That is actually not the place they're coming from. They're working backwards from their conclusion of porn bad. We don't think people should have access to porn. What is the justification we can like get the most people behind for this sort of thing? Oh, it's the protecting children. It's the pearl clutching. In a 6-3 ruling, the justices rejected arguments from the porn industry that the law violates the First Amendment rights of adults to access explicit content online because it required users to share identifying information that could be sold, misused, or hacked. The court's 3 liberals dissented. Advocates for the law hailed the ruling as affirming a powerful tool for keeping children away from a flood of adult material to which they have ready access in the age of the smartphone and tablet. What I would say is that's on the parents, though, right? You probably shouldn't be giving your 5-year-old a tablet or a smartphone with unfettered. You shouldn't be giving them a smartphone or a tablet, period, I would argue, but especially one with unfettered access to the internet. And so I would argue that it is very much your duty as a parent to implement some sort of parental restriction on devices that you give your children. And I would maybe even be willing to go a step further and say children who have been harmed as a result of their parents not putting these restrictions on devices they've been given could be themselves subject to some sort of penalty as a result of, basically they're not taking care of their kids. They didn't put a penalty restriction on it. Their kid got hurt or harmed in some sort of way. The parents I may be in support of punishing the parents in that scenario. Opponents said it could open the door to a broader range of sites requiring users to hand over sensitive biometric information or government identification. Justice Clarence Thomas, who wrote the majority opinion, found that age verification law has only an incidental effect on protected speech. The power to require age verification is within a state's authority to prevent children from accessing sexually explicit content, Thomas wrote. In dissent, Justice Elena Kagan, joined by Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, said while it was a reasonable goal to try and protect minors from lewd material online, that could be accomplished with tools that don't trample on adults' rights. Exactly, yeah. This, just like any piece of legislation, the pros and the cons need to be weighed against each other, right? I mean, there is very few pieces of legislation that are perfectly clean and that you couldn't find any sort of criticism for. Weigh the pros of protecting kids from accessing these sites or whatever versus the cons of restricting tax-paying regular adults from being able to easily access this thing that they want to be able to access. Anti-pornography and online child safety advocates cheered the court's decision. The SCOTUS ruling upholding Texas's law creates important precedent establishing that age verification is a constitutional way to prevent children from accessing pornography online, said Danny Pinter of the nonprofit Center on Sexual Exploitation, formerly Morality and Media. This ruling paves the way for other states to pass similar legislation and will have a profound positive impact on preventing children from being exposed to pornography online. They act like kids accessing pornography is like actually the end of the world, which like it's not ideal and you don't want it to happen. And we have age restrictions on pornography for a reason, but also like they don't need to pretend like it ruins the kid's life or something. They're pretending like it's a meteor falling out of the sky. Free speech and online privacy advocates, meanwhile, reacted with dismay. The ruling overturns decades of precedent and has the potential to upend access to First Amendment protected speech on the internet for everyone, children and adults alike, said Samir Jain of the nonprofit Center for Democracy and Technology. Age verification requirements still raise serious privacy and free expression concerns that should be expressed before states move forward with these laws, he added. Jess Mears, a law professor at the University of Akron, said the ruling in Free Speech Coalition Inc. vs. Paxton greenlights censorship tools that could end up chilling online speech more broadly. Offline, showing your ID to buy beer, lottery tickets, or fireworks is trivial, Myers said. Online, it means handing over your biometrics or driver's license to a random website and risking your privacy just to access legally protected speech. Yeah, that's the reason why a number of these sites refuse to even set up this sort of system, because they realize, I think they realize the PR and subsequent negative profit harm that they could get from that was greater than the profit loss of actually losing the entire Texas clientele, or the Texas clientele that's not willing to use a VPN, because I'm sure there's still plenty of people in Texas accessing Pornhub and these porn websites. They're just doing so through a VPN. And also, I think children, people under the age of 18, more so than adults, probably know what VPNs are, right? I would imagine that the tech literate children are more familiar with the concept of a VPN and what it can do for them than the 60-year-old lawmakers, the Republican lawmakers passing this sort of thing. The Texas law requires age verification for any site where more than 1/3 of the content is sexual material harmful to minors. Users must submit digital identification, a government-issued ID, or other forms of proof that they are 18 or older. The law bars the sites from retaining identifying information, but it does allow them to transfer the data for verification purposes. It's not, even if they don't store the data, though, there are still humongous security concerns with doing this sort of thing. Pornhub, one of the world's most popular adult sites, is among the plaintiffs challenging the law. In response to statutes in Texas and elsewhere, Pornhub cut off service to states requiring age verification, blocking access to the site across much of the South. The porn industry plaintiffs, who formed an association called Free Speech Coalition, sued to block the Texas law before it went into effect in 2023. Derek L. Schaefer, an attorney for the coalition, argued that the lower court ruling allowing the law could open the door to an emerging wave of regulations that imperil free speech online. He told the justices that young people should be prevented from accessing porn, but that there were less intrusive ways of doing that than age verification. He suggested that educating parents and using content filtering software were better routes, but Justice Amy Coney Barrett pushed back on that, citing her own children. Oh, I'm gonna laugh. I have a feeling I'm gonna laugh really hard at whatever the heck she's about to say here. Kids can get online porn through gaming systems, tablets, phones, computers, Barrett said. Let me just say that content filtering for all those different devices, I can say from personal experience, is difficult to keep up with. Oh my God, stop giving your kids so many devices then. What? This seems like, oh my gosh. This is... I guarantee you if somebody made this exact same argument to her using some other piece of the government, she would call it ridiculous and be like, it's not the government's responsibility to take care of you and your children. It's your responsibility to do this. You're an individual, blah, blah, blah. The government's not here to handhold you or do things for you. That's what I'm going to give her the same response, right? The government's here not to handhold for you, right? It's your job as their mom to do all of this, to do these content filterings, to determine which devices are and aren't safe to give them, to ensure that they have an enriched life that isn't just glued to a tablet or whatever. That is your job, not the state's job. Another section of the law, which was blocked by a lower court, requires sites to post sexual material health warnings that make widely disputed claims that pornography is potentially biologically addictive and proven to harm brain development. I could totally believe that it is potentially biologically addictive. That, depending on how they define that, I mean, if it releases, some sort of endorphins when you access porn, and the consistent, regular accessing of those dopamines, those hormones, is an addiction, then it is totally conceivable that it is biologically addictive. Now, to say it's proven to harm brain development, I think would require much more substantiation, and I think my gut would tell me that to the extent they could prove that, it would be very, very minor, and that they couldn't really make a causation argument there. They could maybe make a correlation. That one, the potentially biologically addictive, maybe makes sense to me. The proven to harm brain development, I don't know about. Sites that violate the law face fines of up to $10,000 a day. I will continue to enforce the law against any organization that refuses to take the necessary steps to protect minors from explicit materials. It is so annoying how they keep falling back on the protecting kids. It is such like a distraction. It is a humongous red herring. It is not what it is not what they care about at all. This is a religious decision. This is their religion tells them pornography is bad, and so therefore they think, oh, we need to impose our religious goals, ideals on the rest of society, and say, I don't think society should have pornography because my God says we shouldn't have porn, and if my God says me shouldn't have porn, then that means that the rest of us shouldn't have porn. And so they're just using the kids thing as like a distraction, because they know that they can get far more support from regular weirdos, from people who are apolitical or pseudo-political. They'll be able to drag more of those people over and trick more of them into siding with them than they will trying to get people on board with the idea that God is against pornography and that's why we should eliminate it. The ruling could bolster a broader push by children's safety advocates for laws aimed at protecting young people from a range of harms online. Several states have passed laws in recent years restricting minors' access to social networks or app stores without parental consent, some of which have been struck down by courts. And federal lawmakers in May reintroduced a bipartisan Kids Online Safety Act that would hold online platforms and social apps responsible for taking reasonable measures to shield children from inappropriate content. My understanding is that these websites already very much do that, though, right? Both from the perspective of they don't want the bad PR of showing kids adult content, but also from the perspective of making money, right? They make the most money when they show kids-centered content. They make the most money when they show adults whatever niche-centered adult content that they happen to be interested in. And so they have both a financial and PR interest of ensuring that kids do not access explicit content through their sites or whatever. That's not to say that it doesn't happen and that it's impossible to do so, but I would imagine, and I don't even think it takes speculation to say that they already are doing that, at least to some degree. It could also spur demand for software that lets people skirt those age checks, including minors who still want to see adult content and adults who want to do so without risking their anonymity. Yeah, I think this has already happened, right? My understanding is that as soon as they did this ban in Texas, or when it passed, that the Google search results for VPN services went up like 300 or 400% or something crazy like that. And I would imagine that subscriptions from inside the state of Texas went up, maybe not to that extent, but they went up substantially, at least 50%. I would not be surprised. Those include virtual private networks, or VPNs, which allow users to route their internet traffic through remote servers. A user in Texas, for instance, could pose as one from Oklahoma or Canada to reach an adult website. Yeah, and my contention is that, I think children, the kind of people that you purportedly don't want to have access to these sites, are the ones that are going to be most savvy and most knowledgeable and most able to use a VPN or something like that to access these sites anyways. Free speech advocates lamented that the court applied a lower standard of First Amendment scrutiny than it had hoped it would. The legislature claims to be protecting children from sexually explicit materials, but the law will do little to block their access and instead deters adults from viewing vast amounts of First Amendment protected content, said Cecilia Wang of the American Civil Liberties Union, which was one of the groups representing the plaintiffs in the case. So yeah, I can't say I'm terribly surprised about all of this. I mean, this seems very much in line with how the Supreme Court has been ruling and acting over the last few years. Yeah, I worry about them doing this for other things too, right? If they can do this for pornography, why couldn't they do this for, say, violent video games or R-rated movies or Maybe even something as innocuous as Family Guy that's T-rated or something, or that's like for PG-13 or something. I imagine that if they have gotten the green light to do this sort of thing, that it would be silly for these states not to continue to push the envelope. And I think I would expect it would not blow my mind, and I'm giving a soft prediction that we're going to see either in Texas or some other state, we're going to see this same principle applied to restricting something else aside from pornography. And my first guess would be violent video games. It would not blow my mind if Texas implements some sort of rule that, like, to purchase a violent video game or whatever, an R-rated game, that you have to go through this age verification process.